Welcome back to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. In part 2 of our conversation with Heather, we go even deeper into the realities behind the uniform. She opens up about her long battle with mental health, being diagnosed with complex PTSD and bipolar disorder, and the toll the job and life has taken on her body. From multiple surgeries to the terrifying F-450 accident in October 2024, Heather shares what recovery looks like when you've spent a lifetime serving others. We talk mentorship, resilience, and why even now, working part-time and helping her partner's landscaping business, Heather is still driven to make a difference. This is the second half of a powerful story of survival, service, and sacrifice. If you have not listened to part 1, please go back and do so. Let's get right into it with part 2 with Heather.
You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158. All right. So we're going to kind of get into breaking some barriers here. Being one of the only women in your field, what kind of hurdles did you face?
Well, actually, I conferred with a couple of my female friends, but I would just, ask them if they had anything else to add to this because we've all worked together for so long. But I would, like I was mentioning, the good old boy system, we kind of have a hard time getting the wheels to move forward. It's better now than it was because there's so many more women in EMS than there was even when I started working in 2011. There's still a challenge with women being supervisors. Now that trend seems to be changing. Some services, not so much. Other services, yeah. That depends on states and counties and, how far south you are. Sometimes, I hate to say it, I'm not knocking the South. I love the South. People are different here. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of wonderful qualities, but there's some things that, sometimes get stuck in the mud because of that. That's one of the things. There's the you sent girls mentality. We're girls, not women. That goes right through me. I shouldn't have to justify my presence as a female to be in this career path. That is one of those things that, I've heard it come even out of women's mouth. Most of the time it's older people, elderly people. I shouldn't have to justify my role as a woman being in this field, period, to anybody. No, if I'm here, you called me, I'm here to help you. I don't care what the color of your skin is. I don't care what your sex is. I don't care what your orientation is. I don't care about any of that. I'm trying to be compassionate and trying to help you. Now, granted, we've got frequent flyers and people that just, but still, that's one of the problems, big time. Everyone in EMS, and I can say this, and I'm sure other people would agree with me, especially with newbies and new medics, especially new EMTs, we kind of eat our own young. We do not cut anybody any slack, especially if it's people that we don't know. Somebody comes in new, we don't know them, it's kind of very insular. It's very cliquey sometimes. Some services more than others. I'm a stand up for the little guy kind of thing until, but people still have to prove their mettle, especially girls, girls have to prove their mettle. It's that mentality. It's the, we're really hard on each other. You put a bunch of type A personality people together that all think that their crap doesn't stink a lot of times, or people with bigger egos have personality clashes. You can see how this can be a problem. across different types. I mean, whether it's firemen, whether it's police officers, whether it's EMS people, you can see when people have that kind of forward personality, and a lot of people are very outgoing, they're very outspoken, they're going to say what they're going to say. You can see how that can be, especially with women. There's physical challenges. A lot of times people just assume that you can't do something. They just assume that you can't do it. They assume that you can't lift the stretcher. They assume that you can't lift a patient. That aggravates me. I mean, now granted, I have some physical challenges because I've had surgery. Okay. So, I mean, there's always that. You're judged on your appearance. I can't tell you how many times I've reached across a patient to put nasal cannula on. They ask me if I'm single. Oh, wow. And that's not from my coworkers, but there's can be a little harassment. There can be a little off color. Now, granted, I'm tough. I got tough skin. I grew up with boys. I used to work in the cable industry, the telecommunications industry. I worked in the service department. I worked with all men. It doesn't bother me, but it may bother some other girls. We got a different generation. It doesn't bother me, but I haven't really had anybody be really uncouth. I've had patients be really uncouth with me, but not my coworkers. But that might bother somebody else that's 19, 20 years old. Okay. I'm grown. There's much more women, like I said, in the EMS now. Let's see. But I think that there's a lot of things that women do bring to the table, though, especially when it comes to obstetrical and gynecological issues, pregnancy issues, 12 lead EKGs, just dealing with women when you have to assess them. When you're coming up to somebody, you're a total stranger to them. A lot of women, they don't, that you don't know what their background is. You don't know if they came from a background of domestic violence, sexual violence. They're afraid of men. You just don't know. Women bring a lot to the table when it comes to empathy, when it comes to patience. Sometimes when it, not patience as in the patient, but patience. Compassion and kindness. They're just their physical touch. Sometimes it's less aggressive. Just the way that your voice is sometimes is easier for patients. Physically challenged or mentally challenged patients sometimes are easier. If you're a mom, sometimes it's easier, or just you bring a little bit more compassion to the table. And I'm not saying, please understand me, I'm not saying that men don't, but sometimes if a woman is losing a baby, or there's some kind of gynecological issue or something like that, they are not comfortable, or they're getting a 12 lead EKG where you actually have to disrobe the top half of a patient and bare part of their body, their intimate parts of their body. They do not want to have a male stranger doing that. They would feel more, I always tell people, I'm going to have to lift up your blouse, or I'm going to have to, do this. I'm going to have to touch you here, but it's even better if it's a woman back there with a woman, with a witness sometimes, because that can lead to all kinds of issues for men. I mean, and I don't want to see any of my male counterparts be accused, good moral character, good guys be accused of doing something that I know that they would never, ever cross the line and do, it's because somebody's looking to sue somebody or cause a problem, because those things do happen, so there are advantages and disadvantages.
Well, we know more often than not that women have the ability to be more, have that nurturing characteristic.
Yes.
Which, women are more comfortable with the nurturing part. Not saying that men are not nurturing. They are nurturing in their own way, but women are more understanding in the anatomy part, in the nurturing.
Well, I have a perfect case in point for that. Me and one of my male partners, he works in Texas now. We went on a call for a girl, and I know it really bothered him. It was not a pleasant call. We went out for a girl who was having a miscarriage, and unfortunately it was like a 12, 13 week miscarriage. And she was standing in her bedroom, and the actual baby, the fetus was hanging out of her. And she was completely in shock. And he was like, he just, he was not a father. He's like, I said, I got this. I said, just go get the stretcher and let me have a private moment with her, because I had to cut the cord and I had to wrap up. I said, sweetie, do you want to, because some people everybody's different. You don't ever know how they're going to react. You don't know if they want to not look at it. You want to look at it. I wrapped it up and in a little blanket for her and let her hold it and keep it, and just try to comfort her. And it was really sad and it was really hard. And he just didn't know how to relate to that, not because he was incompetent, not because he didn't know what was going on or how to treat the patient medically. He could not relate compassionate. Yeah. He was very compassionate and very sympathetic to her needs. But I haven't lost a child like that, thank God, but the thing about it is that I have had experience with that with other people close to me and with other mothers. And I knew exactly what to do and what to say to try to comfort her. And he goes, because we were working a double medic truck. So it's not like he didn't know what was going on. But I handled that because that was just something that I was able to handle and try to be compassionate and kind and try to do everything for her so that she was able to have closure and be able to see, because people need to have that moment. When I think that when there's a pregnancy loss, that women need that moment to be able to see that and visualize and say goodbye, especially when it's a formed fetus. We're not talking about, real early on where you're just losing blood or what, things like tissue or whatever. I'm talking about, something that you can hold in your hand like this, right. I mean, this big, that looks like formed, people need to process a grieving process. It's important. That's so important. And that's part of our job. It's not easy. I remember every single detail of that, but you have to do that for people. It's so important because how are we going to take something away from their grieving process of a baby? And not to say that other men couldn't do it. Not saying that at all. There are probably I can think of a list of guys right now that I know that could handle that with kindness and compassion. I'm just saying that sometimes people can't relate.
Yeah, it just takes a woman's touch.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes it does. And sometimes you need a man to get people in gear. Not with me necessarily. But sometimes you need a man to strong arm folks. I mean, sometimes people get out of hand, and I've had to call for help with the guys before because I've had people go buck wild in the back of my ambulance, and I need some stronger hands.
Yeah, you need some beef back there.
We both need each other. We work in tandem. Exactly. It's like a teeter-totter. We can't do one without the other. Exactly. We're both needed.
I think that should be a great understanding between the gender roles,
for sure,
because it's it's not just one-sided or the other,
right?
We all need each other. We're in it together, and there's two sides of the aspect of it. So
right.
Maybe that's something that could be addressed and try to end that bravado of it's a man's field, because it is a male-dominated field so far.
Yeah, it has been. I think that tide is turning.
Yeah, things are changing, and and they're changing for the good, and hopefully it evens out and it just doesn't go too far to where it's just extreme.
I think the more that women are in the management positions, I mean, the big hospital service I worked for, the woman is the executive director.
Oh wow, okay.
But still there. But then again, there's not that many female supervisors.
Oh.
So you have her in that top spot. But I mean, that is changing because I still, even though I'm not employed with them anymore, I still the majority of my friends are, or we all go to the same major hospital to drop off our patients. So we talk, we see each other, it's not like we don't see each other. I see them every week.
Okay. Now moving on to mental health and physical health. You've been open about your diagnosis with complex PTSD and bipolar disorder. How have those disorders shaped your life and your career?
I had PTSD before I went into EMS due to, a lot of challenges in my upbringing. They always kept on saying, "Oh, you're depressed, and of course I had a lot of challenges in my young adult life, with having to, go through, like you said, the Iraqi war, with being 18 years old and having a baby and having to go through all that worry and my first husband was a police officer, there's just a lot, growing up and then having to go through a lot of things and, divorces and things like that were very challenging for me. I always struggled with insomnia and things like that way before I got into EMS. And that just exacerbated the problem of, not being able to sleep and starting to have, where, you're so exhausted that, you try to sleep and all you end up doing is running ambulance calls in your sleep. You're telling people, "Hey, I can't sleep." And they're like, "Oh, we'll try this. We'll try this." Well, none of that happens with bipolar disorder. I felt very stigmatized getting that diagnosis, which I only got that diagnosis just about 4 years ago because I finally got to the right therapist, which I had found, again, that therapist, my first therapist that I found that really, really I connected with, that really found what was really going on with me. Because I kept on telling them I can't sleep. I have these racing thoughts, and they're like, "Well, it's PTSD," which I knew that, but it was something more than that because of problems I had with controlling my anger, controlling my impulsivity, things like that, and finally my therapist and my doctor collaborated because I had an outstanding physician when I lived back in Tennessee, and I have an outstanding psychiatrist physician now that's outstanding, who really took the time that they communicated with each other and were like, this checks all these boxes. So I was put on the proper medication and taken off of antidepressants, which first of all, I've lost almost 50 pounds because I'm not on the wrong medication. And I was able to finally sleep, and it literally changed my life being put on the proper medication because I started to feel like a normal person,
Right.
quote unquote, a little bit more. I feel a little bit more not because, when you're running balls to the wall, because I worked a lot. I worked then all mostly urban at that time, EMS, and you're working 12-hour shifts, not 24s, because the call volume is so high and you're just run. And I worked straight nights, 6 to 6 or 7P to 7A. Or sometimes I'd fill in and work extra. And we always had to work mandatory overtime because of shortages a lot. And when mandatory overtime means mandatory overtime. So you'd have to work 11 to 7 or an extra shift, 12 hours shift a week. You're working 60 hours a week, 72 hours a week, and you're exhausted. And so, those things start to rear their ugly head. Bipolar disorder for me, I felt very stigmatized. I wanted people not to think that I was crazy, that I couldn't make proper decisions, that, I wasn't going to let it rule me. Sometimes you feel like it's ruling you. But I started to do EMDR therapy, which is the eye movement desensitization therapy. Yep. My therapist, I think, described it best is like you have a yard full of dandelions if you just mow it down, they pop right back up. Just like bad experiences, bad calls, bad memories, whatever, flashbacks. You get flashbacks, nightmares, panic attacks. They come out of nowhere. But what EMDR therapy does, and now I'm also doing a different type of advanced kind of EMDR. It's like there's a brand new therapy that I've only done one session of, but it's like that yanks it out by the roots, and then you actually put it on a picture frame in the wall behind glass. And it's like, yes, this happened to me, but it doesn't deeply affect me like it used to when it was just deeply rooted within your feelings and your mind and your heart and your soul. EMDR therapy is a process. Literally, you go in there, there's not really a time limit on EMDR therapy when you have a session. They use the little buzzers or they use lights to help you kind of focus your attention on that. And it's not the same as reliving the process. It's kind of, they try to take it in snapshots so that you're not just retelling and regurgitating a story, but literally sometimes it feels like they're just ripping your guts out. Literally you just like laying it out and you feel like you're being dissected sometimes. It takes everything out of you. You're just exhausted afterwards. You don't realize that all those feelings are in there when you have PTSD, and I call it the trauma box. You stuff everything in the trauma box, and the lid just keeps on getting like this and this, and it just pops open. So when you go into EMDR and you start to talk about something, everything just comes out. For me, I start to cry. I get angry, or I start heart racing. It's one of those things where you have to purge and go through those emotions so that you can get it out.
Yes.
It's a difficult process. And it may be something that happened before EMS that's triggering, like I said, I grew up with domestic violence. So if I would see some type of violence on the ambulance, then it would exacerbate the issue. You see what I'm saying? And bipolar disorder, with having hypomania, I don't have bipolar 1. That's people that have those delusional issues. I have bipolar 2. So you have those vacillating, depression, hypomania kind of things. And that makes it difficult because it's hard to control your emotions sometimes. It's like I could stuff it in the ambulance, but then when I would get out of it, I'd be in a rage, or somebody would make me angry and I would just blow up. Because you feel like everything is you're just a powder keg. Right. So, there's been an EMS before, everybody's just like, oh, man up, suck it up, but that trend is changing. I try to tell people there's no shame in getting help. There's no shame in talking with your peers about it. There's no shame in trying to go and go to the doctor. Tell your doctor. Maybe they can make a recommendation. I have to take medication. I'm one of those people that has to take medication because I have issues. But that's okay. I don't like the person that I am without medication. That I cannot manage my stress well. I can't manage my emotions well without medication. That's just part of my chemical imbalance. And I take medication to help keep things balanced. I go to therapy to keep my healing process in check. And that's what I'm doing. And I strongly suggest that other people do the same thing. There's no reason to suffer in silence. There's no reason to feel shame about it. And I understand about the shame. I do. Yeah. I understand about feeling guilty, and I struggle with that as well still, but I'm still out here trying to be brave and trying to tell people that to try to get help and to try to, at least take steps forward to try to get some help or to try to start having a conversation about it.
Exactly. I'm right there with you. I suffered through some traumatic childhood traumas that I'm finally, after 40-something years, dealing with.
And I'm still dealing with a lot of things. We're working on things all the time. And sometimes I go to therapy and I'm like, I don't have it in me today to do it.
Right.
Sometimes I just don't.
I'm fortunate enough that, with my fiance, Brianne, I allow her into the counseling sessions. So she
Right.
understands what I've gone through and why I'm the way I am. And so, it's good for her to understand, and it's also good for me to let it out. And, I'm taking medications for my anxiety and my panic
I do too.
attacks. I haven't been diagnosed with PTSD, but I imagine that's probably something that's there. I know the therapist had talked about that,
And there's different types of
I totally
PTSD.
understand.
I have complex PTSD because it's not just one event. It's just like with soldiers in war experience a different type of complex PTSD than somebody who's been in, God forbid, a school shooting or some kind of, traumatic event where somebody feels like their life has been threatened or they've been in some kind of terrible car accident or something like that, versus this repeated trauma and having people's lives in your hand or people begging you not to let them die. And, that's a whole different type of trauma. It's not to say that somebody else's trauma is less or more. It's
Right.
Your trauma that you've experienced is just as traumatic and life-changing and can be, troubling to you as mine is. It's not any different. It affects you profoundly just as much as it affects me profoundly.
Exactly. Mine prevented me. I allowed it to prevent me from, being the person that I wanted to become. But yet I overcame it, even though I came out of a bad situation. So I had to grow out of it, and obviously needed therapy for it. But I am a
Right.
better person today than I was in my younger days. So
Yeah, I'm working on myself all the time. I'm trying to do better.
So, you said that you've had 3 major surgeries. How did those surgeries impact your ability to going such a physical demanding field?
Well, my physician, my orthopedic surgeon is freaking outstanding. First of all, let me just say I had to give props to him because he is an Iraqi veteran. He was a
Okay.
combat surgeon before he came back to fix everybody else's ailments back in the States. He's amazing. I tore my ACL when I was working in the very rural, like I told you, it was me and the 3 EMTs.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we had manual cots, and if anybody in EMS, they all know about the manual cot. I'm sure they're probably groaning or holding their back, knees, or shoulders because I've tore my ACL with that. I already had some degenerative issues previous to that the doctor was like, "Holy cow, your knee is in pretty bad shape." And this was when I was still in paramedic school at that time. But it wasn't really giving me too much trouble. Get a cortisone shot, no big deal. But I did tear my ACL when my partner got injured that day as well. He had a groin injury and I had a torn ACL. We were both pretty much down for the count that day. But I had a surgery to fix that, and I was doing pretty good. And limped my leg along for about 6 years. With my physician, my orthopedic surgeon, we limped it along pretty good, but eventually got to the point where it was bone on bone. It was extremely painful. And my doctor was like, yeah, it's time to do the knee replacement. I had to have a right knee replaced because he told me, he said, you're going to get out there at night and you're going to stumble up on a cot or a scene or fall and, out there in a ditch somewhere and you're going to break your femur. That's what he told me. He goes, if you don't get this fixed. So, but it was the best thing that I ever did for myself, getting my knee replaced. It was hell the first 3 weeks after I had it done. But for me, physical therapy is the key with that. Cause I said, how am I going to get back to work to get full function? Because first of all, I was so much younger than it's unusual to get a knee replacement in your 40s. That's just not the norm. But he told me, he goes, you're going to wear it out going in and out of the ambulance. He said it was repetitive motion that wore my leg out so much, going in and out, lifting the cot, and then going in and out of the ambulance, in and out, in and out. So he told me I'd wear it out quicker working the way that I work. He said, you should change jobs. I said, well, when you start writing checks to pay my bills, I'll change jobs. But it was the best thing I ever did for myself, because my leg was excruciatingly painful before that. And now I don't have any pain. Now, granted, I feel like I got a bucket of bolts in there sometimes. I'm my own weatherman, but that's just part of having metal in your body. But, it does give me some challenges. I can't run anymore. Well, you can try to run, but if you see me running, you better be running too. Because there's, like I said, there's a bear, the bomb, gunfire, something, because you just can't run when you have a knee replacement. I mean, you can walk for exercise. But you are limited with exercise as well. You can't run on a treadmill. You can't run out here on the concrete. You can swim, you can do elliptical, but there's certain weights that you can't lift anymore with your legs, because it puts too much stress. Then I had a shoulder surgery. I tore my labrum cuff and my rotator cuff. They had to shave my shoulder right here down to the bone marrow, and it took longer to recover from this. I was out for 2 months with my knee, but I was out for 3.5 months with my shoulder. It took me about 6 months before I could lift my arm up over my head.
We will return after this quick ad break.
The William H. Bill Butler Jr. Foundation is on a mission to honor first responders and support those who serve. We provide scholarships for families who have lost a hero in the line of duty, offer second chances to juvenile offenders who are working to rebuild their future, and help new recruits pursuing careers as first responders. Through generous donations and the sale of merchandise, we're building a community that uplifts, empowers, and creates lasting impact. You can be a part of this mission as well. Visit 8158podcast.com to donate or shop today. Together, we can support those who serve, honor those we've lost, and give hope to those who need it most. Behind every badge is a story, and behind every story is a sacrifice. This is the 8158 podcast, where we honor the lives and legacies of first responders and their families. If our mission speaks to your heart, if these stories move you like they move us, join us on Patreon. For just $5 a month, you'll get ad-free listening, exclusive merchandise, behind-the-scenes content, and video episodes only available to our patrons. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement, and you can be a part of it. Support us at patreon.com/8158podcast. Let's continue to share the stories that deserve to be heard.
It was so my whole right side has been overhauled. I've literally given an arm and a leg to this job, literally, not figuratively. But my shoulder doesn't give me too much fit. I does have arthritis in it, just aches and pains. But I have to be mindful when I'm lifting, when I'm pulling patients over from a bed to a stretcher, or helping them, that I have to pull with my hands this way and not this way, but from the underneath to pull with things close to me, because he told me my orthopedic surgeon said, if I tear my rotator cuff again, that it will end my career.
Oh my gosh.
So and another reason why I'm very fortunate that, Will and I have a lawn business, and that I can work part-time now, and not, I was working in the hospital too in shock trauma level 1 trauma center previous, besides working part-time on the ambulance. One reason why I slowed down to part-time is so that I can maintain my longevity. I don't want to have another injury that would be career ending, because that would be devastating to me.
Right. Yeah, that would be. I mean,
that would be devastating to me.
That's a lot of surgeries and a lot of.
And you can ask you. I'm sure that you've interviewed other people, other medics, other EMTs, maybe in your past. Knees, backs, shoulders, are the things that get people, because of all the lifting and everything that we do, are the main injuries that people have in EMS: knees, backs, and shoulders.
Well, let me tell you from experience, as being a truck driver, knees, backs, shoulders, elbows, neck.
Yeah, of carpal tunnel, wrists.
Yes.
My neck is supposed to have a curve in it, and it doesn't anymore. They told me that too. They're like, you're supposed to have a curve in the back of your neck, and you don't anymore. I said, could it be because I hunched over a laptop in patience all the time, and the bouncing in the back of the truck, and I have compression in my spine as well.
Right.
So, but I mean, I'm thankful to the Lord that my back does not give me, I'm knocking on wood, does not give me fits. Like, I know friends of mine who have very, very, very painful back issues.
Yeah. I know that feeling, trust me.
And I feel for you, because I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
So moving on now, you had an accident involving an F-450 last October.
Oh, yeah.
Could you tell us about what happened and how?
Yes. I have worked through that. It's easy for me to talk about. I actually like to tell people about it, because it can happen so quickly, and I've learned my lesson about not wearing my seatbelt. It was just normal morning. We got a call we got a chest pain call. We hop in the truck. We did not have a patient. We were going to a call.
Okay.
We were going lights and sirens, and we were in the county that I work in now, because this just happened last October. I was glad that it was a cool morning, so I had on a hoodie. I had on long sleeves, so I was glad for that. We were going to a call. We were driving through town, so we weren't on a highway. We were driving in town, so we weren't going super fast rate of speed. Lights and sirens. We were coming up to an intersection, and we were just my laptop was messing up. Of course, equipment always messing up, and I was trying to get it to reload, restart. And I was talking to my partner, Maddie. He's a young guy. He's like 22 years old. We were talking about, I said, hey, how was your honeymoon vacation? We were just having a conversation, just talking, and he's getting ready to approach an intersection, and we were slowing down. And like I said, I had my head down in the laptop, wasn't looking up. And he said, and he didn't get to finish the sentence, and we got plowed on my side in the intersection. And it hit right behind my driver's door on the box, and it flipped us on the side. It hit us so hard. When it hit us, it knocked me out of my seat. And if anybody's ever seen the inside of an ambulance, for the people that haven't been in the inside of an ambulance, there's a big giant console with switches, with all of our switches for the master and all the sirens and everything like that. And then there's radios, and then of course all of our drinks and everything, and then the stereo and all the steering wheel. It knocked me out of my seat. And then we kind of like teetered there for like a half a second. It's like time slowed down, and then wham, right. We ended up on the driver's side. Well, I ended up upside down on top of my partner up against the A post. And I was like, it stunned me. I mean, it stunned me. And I was like, Matt, are you okay? Are you okay? He's like, oh my God, Heather, your head's bleeding. We're very fortunate. Matt walked away without a scratch. Being young and everything like that. But I got a gash on my head. I had to get some stitches. I was banged up and bruised up. But of course I went to the hospital in the ambulance. Of course, when they heard that there was an ambulance crash and that I was coming in the hospital because they all know me. Everybody freaked out, which, at least I know they love me, Of course, I was scanned head to toe and, everything. And thank God everything's intact. I just, had to get some stitches and I got a dent. Still got a dent in my head here. My friends, of course, had to rib me when I got back from the hospital. My friends drove me back to the ambulance service and so I could get my car. And obviously I was off that day. They said, well, you're really hard to kill, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I am. They had to get dark humor, they're like, well, at least they didn't kill you. You're hard to kill. So, but it destroyed the part of the ambulance, it even bent the diamond plate. It totaled the vehicle that hit us, which was a quad cab Ford it was actually F-350 because I went back to look at the pictures because I wanted to make sure it was right. It was one of those big farm trucks, the quad cab Ford F-350, brand new one. It totaled it. He said that he heard us, but he didn't see us. How that's possible, I don't know. We weren't going fast enough to outrun our siren. We were at an intersection. The bystanders actually, I got to give it up to people in that town. God love them, because obviously when it happened, people saw it happen and they immediately came to our aid because the truck was on its side. We're all the way down there on the ground on that part with the airbags and stuff, sucking up coffin with the dust, and people came immediately to our aid. A couple of mechanics, they climbed up on the wheels and opened the door. And because I had to try to get out of there. And like I told you, I got knocked for a loop and they helped me out, and they were just wonderful. But before the cops got there and the other EMS units and, the fire department, they were wonderful. I made sure that my director made sure that they made a post thanking the people in the community for helping us, because I don't know what we would have done without them, besides all of the other first responders, as soon as you hear something like that, the cavalry comes,
everybody up.
And that's the first time for me in 15 years that I've ever experienced anything like that. And I can tell you, it was very, very scary. It was very scary. And, it really hits you later. I could have been killed, yes. And I'm so grateful that we didn't have a patient and we weren't in the back of the box, because where he hit on the box, it was right in the passenger, or right in the actual side door when we go into the ambulance, the corner of the box and the side door. And when it flipped us, it would have definitely caused very serious injury to the patient and myself if we would have been in the back.
Oh my God.
So I'm very thankful, because I lost a friend to that. I lost a fellow paramedic to that. He got killed, and so did the patient. So, and that was horrible. It was beyond horrible, and we miss him every day. There's not hardly days go by that I don't think of him. So I've learned my lesson.
Yeah, you got to be careful out there, and
because people can't hear you. They don't see you, they don't hear you. The way vehicles are made now, they're not paying attention. They're on their phone.
Yeah, too busy squawking on their phone.
Too busy.
Yeah, generally, when I'm out there working and driving, I'll hear sirens and I'll be on the lookout, and I'll look behind me, look in the mirrors, I'll look in the intersections. And if I don't see it, I'm still looking, because I want to make sure I know exactly where you're at.
Right. But it's the same way with motorcycles. I try to be very, very vigilant about other first responders and motorcycles.
Yeah.
Because it's the most dangerous.
So we're going to kind of touch on another topic here. Your son followed in the family footsteps and is now a police officer after serving in the military. How does it feel watching him walk his own path?
Well, I couldn't be more proud of him. I could not be more proud of him. He's been a police officer now, 7, eight years, I guess. It's going on 8 years. He's also in the military. He's still in the National Guard.
Okay.
He had a deployment to Romania. He came back in December of 23 or 24. I'm trying to remember, but he was gone for about 9 months then. And he came back and started working at the police department he works at now. And he doesn't live close to me anymore. My kids all live in Missouri, and I live in Mississippi. So, but I couldn't be more proud of him. He excels at his job. He gets good marks, and people say good things about him. And he really loves his job. He's very committed to it. He makes good arrests, and But as a mama, I try not to. We all know how things can happen in a nanosecond. So I try not to. My son is very well trained. He is, he knows Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's very athletic. He takes care of himself. He does everything that you should do to mentally, physically prepare yourself to be in that job. But we all know that you can do everything right and something can happen. So, as a mama, I try not to dwell on that, because he does have a wife that's an ICU nurse, and he has 4 children. So from the ages of 14 to 9. So, wow. I try not to think about that. I send him positive vibes and prayers and thoughts for, to keep him safe and protected. He actually has a St. Michael, that was given to him by his late great aunt. It was actually given to his father by his aunt, and his dad passed it down to him when he graduated from the Toledo in the law enforcement academy. So, I make sure that I say, you wearing your necklace? You wearing your necklace? Just because I have worked officer-involved shootings myself on the ambulance, and the last one that I worked, the subject was shot several times and passed away. But one of the officers, it happened in a split second. They were looking for a fugitive, and the fugitive fired. Thank goodness that the officer that was shot in the arm and hand. Mm-hmm. And he was able to flee away from another officer that backed him up, was able to subdue the subject, permanently. Jesus.
Yeah.
But it was still, to get that call over the radio about an officer down, is your heart is right here. I don't care who you are, how long you've been working, whatever, because those guys. They're your coworkers. We're a family, Right. So anytime an officer gets in this, I've done it when I worked at the hospital-based service. When they get in a scuffle or a car accident or anything like that, you're up here. Right. You have to kind of you bring it down a notch, but because that's the ones that you drive on 2 wheels to. You're like, wait a minute, who is it? Which one is it? Which one of my guys is that? Because then we all work on the same shift. You get to know those guys. They go on calls with us. So I try not to think about that way.
Yeah. Just hope for the best.
Positive vibes.
Yeah, positive vibes, and I'm sure he's well trained, and
But I couldn't be more proud of both of my children. They're the best thing I've ever done in my life.
I can imagine. Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling to be a parent and to have your children succeed.
And a Mimi. I'm also a Mimi. I got 6 grandkids.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's right. You're a grandma.
Yeah.
You call it a Mimi, huh?
Yeah, I'm a Mimi.
In our family, we call him Nana.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm a little too young for that. They started early. So I said, I'm a Mimi and not a mama or anything like that. I'm just not mentally prepared for that.
Okay. So after years of mentoring others in EMS, what's something you hope that carry with them that you taught?
I I'm so glad that I got to mentor and precept so many times. I precepted for 12 years. I wish that I still did it for, like, I used to do it for the community college where I went to school and graduated from. And I'm super proud and honored that I was able to do that. I took that role very seriously. And one of the things that, I always tried to teach them was, trying to be calm under pressure. I would tell people sometimes this job is black and white in some ways. Some people can do it, some people can't. And that's just the truth. That's just the hard truth. That to be compassionate, even when you don't want to be, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. To study hard, to know your medications. Don't be afraid to call the doctor for help. Be humble. Because especially with medics, don't let your ego outgrow your britches, because you're going to get a serving of humble pie, and it's usually going to be in front of a doctor or a nurse that, really probably doesn't like you. It's going to be, and you have, all that you have in this job is your reputation. It takes a long time to earn that respect sometimes from people, and you have them trust your judgment, that when you bring somebody in from the field. And it's super important to be humble and compassionate and knowledgeable, stay up with your education. Even though sometimes it's difficult to do that when you're trying to work and balance, kids and life and everything like that. But it's super important because your patients come first. Yeah. Your patients come first. And also that I try to let them know to have a hobby and friends outside of EMS, because this job will take everything away from you. It can. I mean, you can love it, but it's like a little mafia. I mean, once you're in it, you're in it. If you love it and you do it and you're good at it, even if you're not great at it and you're good at it, you're in it for life. You can't really get away from it. And it's so important to have that good network of people around you, even if it's friends, even if you don't have family, because it's so hard to find people that understand. And you have to know that you have to give some of your life over to this. Right. You have to be prepared to know that you're going to have to give your life over to this, because you work 24-hour shifts, or you work 12-hour shifts, or you work all nights or all days. You're going to miss holidays. You're going to miss your kid's birthday. You're going to miss your wife's anniversary or your husband. You're not going to be able to go on vacation with your family. And people are going to have to either understand it or try to be supportive, or you're going to have to, find some people that will.
Right.
But to just to, you have to find the dedication for it. You really do.
You have definitely a tough career and a very rewarding one. It's honorable what you do, and we love what you guys do, and you take care of your community. And we support everything you guys do. We love you guys. And, where would the citizens be without our first responders?
I don't know. People are leaving the field so much. I always worry about what's going to happen when you call 911 and nobody's there to respond. Yeah. It's one of these things where people are leaving the profession in droves, and something has to change, because there's nothing more rewarding to me. Like something that happened to me a couple of summers ago. I walked into Arby's to get a sandwich on duty with my partner, and she goes, "Oh my God." She goes, "I remember you." She goes, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "I think so." And she come around the corner, she hugged me. She goes, "You saved my life."
Oh my gosh.
I was like, "Oh my God." And then she goes, "Remember I had chest pain and you had to rush me to Jackson." I said, "Oh my God, I do remember you." She goes, "You saved my life and I wanted to thank you." And I said, "Come around here and give me a hug." I said, "Come around here and give me a hug." I mean, you can't, You can't
There's no
buy
price
that.
to that. Yeah, there's no
You
price
can't.
to that.
And then I had that happen to me like 3 weeks ago. There was a drug overdose, and we brought her around, and she was, people get very emotional when this happens, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And, I was like, it's fine. I said, things happen. I said, I don't want to see you, on the other side of this, zipped up in a body bag, and, I went to work, and somebody said, hey, I ran into so-and-so, and they wanted to tell you, thank you for saving her life.
Oh,
And I was
gosh.
like, wow, and that's just something that's few and far between that you get, because there's more bad than good sometimes. And you really kind of start to lose your faith a little bit. And it's just one of those things where sometimes you just get so down from running such crappy calls all the time. And but my guardian angels work overtime. I swear for God, they work overtime. But sometimes there's little things that, even in something that's horrible, there's little things that remind me that there's somebody out there looking out. The universe is looking out for us. That there's a plan, and we're just kind of in the moment. We're just present in the moment.
Yeah, you're doing a fantastic job. It's just astounding, that there are people like you out there that are willing to put their lives on the line and to dedicate their time and their efforts to save strangers, people you don't know, just people in the community.
I do love it.
It's honorable, and it is definitely appreciated. And there are a lot of people that love what you do, especially us.
Well, I'm a very humble person. I don't go around with a big cape on thinking that I'm Superwoman or anything like that. But
Right.
I do sincerely appreciate when people say that to me, or stop me and say thank you for your service, or come up to me and say that I took care of them. That means more to me than anything in the world. I mean it. It does. It makes me emotional. It really does.
I bet.
It really does, because there's so many times where people, they don't appreciate anything that you do. They just crap on you. They treat you like crap. But that's part of it. That's just part of it. But it's so nice to have the other side of that. Or there's so many people that you lose more people than you save. That's another thing I tell my students. You lose more people than you save. And that's just part of life. But it is such a gift to be able to do this job, to be present for people when they're in the most horrible moments of their life. But there's also sometimes when you get to deliver babies, and there's funny things that happen and silly things that people say and do, and it can be funny too. There's just like, you're like, I can't believe that happened,
Right.
Or we hit a deer one time taking a patient. It was cold and rainy and crappy. And it was like 3:00 in the morning. We did not want to drive to Nashville. We're hauling tail to Nashville. I'm in the back with the patient. My partner, she's driving. She's just as redneck as they come. Her and the car were side by side. Is what she said. So the deer ran out, out of the median. She had to mow it down. She was going 80 miles an hour. There was nowhere for her to go. And it was just like, ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. And I was like, what the hell was that? She goes, deer. I said, is the truck okay? She said, nope. So, and the patient we transferred, he goes, I got my limit yesterday. I said, sir, I'm so sorry, but our ambulance has got a busted radiator. I said, we're going to have to sit here in the cold and shut this truck down. I said, until we can get another unit to come meet us, which is going to be about an hour. So we all just sat there in blankets and cut up until we could get somebody out there. I mean, I've rode in the back of the truck before when the ambulance quit on the side of the road. I hitched a ride with him. He goes, are you going to get my neighbor? I said, well, I was until my truck quit. He goes, you want to ride? I said, hell yeah. Let me grab my bag and monitor. I'll ride with you in the back of your truck. I mean, it's crazy stuff like that, but that makes the job fun. It's not all bad. It's not all bad. There's just crazy stuff that happens. It's not all bad.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, I loved having you on here. It's been fun. My stomach is hurting now.
Well, it was so great,
Just
Rico. I
laughing
really
so much.
appreciate being on here and supporting a good cause.
Absolutely. We love and appreciate the fact that you came on here and shared your story with us. And
It was
it's
my
it's been a
pleasure.
blast, through the good and the bad. But with your service, there is good and there's bad. But we made it through, and
That's right.
it's been an incredible story. And now my stomach is like tired and hurting.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to be all doom and gloom because
Yeah.
there's a lot of good times to be had. But it was my pleasure to be here and help you with your good cause and to bring awareness. It's my pleasure to do that.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And, it's going to help a lot of people along the way.
I hope
And
so.
show the good side of it, and
That's right.
bring awareness to the mental health aspect as well.
That's right. Yeah, anytime. Yeah, people, please reach out if you need help.
Exactly. We do have connections with people that have peer support groups, and they can always reach out to us. And if they just want to talk, they can talk to us.
That's great. Yes,
Private message, and if they just want somebody to talk to,
that's right.
I'm not a licensed therapist, but I am a friend.
I'm not either, but I've been there and I understand.
Right. So it's been an honor, and we appreciate having you on here. I'm going to let you go about your business,
Okay.
and puppies are probably wondering what their mom's doing.
Yeah. Well, you take care, Rico, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. It's been an honor. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Good
it.
night.
You have a good night. Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.